All right, welcome to the second lesson, H Radio 223 Part-Timers. This is your lecturer, Chris Jordan speaking and presenting to you today. We will, as I mentioned, be seeing each other on campus next week. So again, just check your schedule where alternate weeks we'll be doing pre-recorded lessons. I'm going to do 3 a week, right? And 3 in class as well. But class times are between 9 and 1 o'clock. All right. Okay, let's not waste any time. This is a continuous of the BRC research and RAMs and understanding an audience. There are some elements to this particular slideshow that are repeated from lesson one. I won't harp on them. I'll just move over them and go to the distinctive parts of this lesson. Once again, please get your copy. Like I said, download the RAMs that are uploaded to Cold Campus, right? Alternatively, go to the BRC site. I think it's BRC org. I'll get that for you. I'll get that for you just so that I don't get it wrong. I'll get that for you and just say that at the end of the lesson. All right. But yes, let's continue with this lesson. Please also by this time you should have your responses from 5 different people that you have sent your simple questionnaire. Well, have a chat about why certain questions might be relevant to research and might certain questions might not be relevant. Uh, do recall quantitative and qualitative analysis so that we are on track, right? So where's your reference in terms of your textbook? Well, chapter 11, page 410 to 425 in the Next Level Radio publishment or publication. 11.2, who is listening? 11.2.1, RAMs. And in Valerie Geller's Beyond Powerful Radio, well, it's chapter 34, understanding your audience and how they listen. So 463 to 464. The Power to Convince, 464 to 466, The Crystal Ball itself, 466 and 467, as well as quote unquote the book, page 473. We have referenced, like I say, parts of this, so you'll recognize the crystal ball was covered in the previous lesson and some aspects too. Okay, so this we have covered as an introduction. So just to remember that in the digital age, the attention span is much shorter, much more temperamental, and much more less, I suppose, I would to a large extent say it's less engaging even though we live in a world of engagement, quote unquote, right? I'm saying on digital platforms, we're getting quite tired of having to constantly engage, and there's a bit of a lower tolerance for that. But it still doesn't mean that people aren't liking things and sharing things, and it's just that maybe not conversations are a big starter, like for anything that is on social media, right? Okay, but regardless, sorry, that's bad English. So regardless, we have to engage a listener on air. That is the most important thing. And remember to keep them there for longer time spent listening, right? So when you do look at RAMs and RAMs reports, you will see time spent listening averages that are, for example, measured over a whole day. I think the one of the reports, the last report, the report that I actually have as an example, it shows that it's like an average of five hours and 15 minutes per demographic, so black, white, Indian, colored, and so on, right? About 5.5 hours is 5:15, 5:18, somewhere there. For a whole day, that's crazy to listen to radio. That's a lot of time, right? And that's pretty cool because that really says a lot about our nation. We're still a radio nation, which is great. We're still very dedicated to, the medium. 92% is of South Africans are estimated to listen to radio in some way, shape, form, or place or platform. It doesn't really matter. And the audio medium is where everything is happening. We did also mention different ways to be able to sensitize, I say so. be able to heighten senses for our audience in auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, right? Or tactile touching, and we discuss the various ways that we can actually do that. All right. So, what can research? It's the power to convince. Coming off Valerie Geller's book, and just some important points to note here. Why is it important to know, like, whether we are talking to our audiences or we're talking at them, right? Talking at them is not really when you say even recognizing someone, you're talking above someone, you're talking around someone, you're talking at them and not to them. Very important for us to make sure that we talk to people so that we can establish or create a connection, right? Um, so you might say, well, I don't really understand that. There's certain examples where, for example, someone's giving a lecture, right? And the lecturer, I'm going to say we, because I'm a lecturer, talk at the class, right? That means that we don't connect with the students. We speak again, we speak at them and not to them. So we don't look them in the eye. We don't speak to a singular person at any one given time. We don't really make a connection. The students get bored, they get distracted, whatever it may be, because it sounds like one long pre-recorded lesson, right? I guess, I guess, right, to the closest degree. But if you can look at very varied people, like for example, doctors that need to speak at, not at two people. We want to know what's going on with with our bodies, or if we're going in for surgery or whatever it may be. Like, it's super important to know that, man, like a doctor needs to talk to someone, right? For example, someone that's involved in sales, right, and talking to clients, not at clients or prospective clients. Very important, right? You might as well say that in pretty much every, profession, there's got to be some kind of element of talking to people, because you can't serve a populace, right, a population, without connecting to that particular customer, right? Okay. In our case, the customer is the listener. So, very important to note the research aspects of what has been revealed to us to know how better to connect. I suppose that's better English, right? How better to connect to our listener, make sure that the time that we spend with them is valuable and it's valid, right? Learning how to communicate with your listener is an art form, right? We never speak to the like I say, the plural. Very important that you never say they, them, like I'm saying, you guys, that type of stuff. And it's such a silly little thing, but it's so super important because it says a lot about where your mindset is at, because when I do talk to many people at one time, I will change the way that I speak. Also, I will change of what I speak of, right? And I'll cater it to a crowd as opposed to a individual person, right? An individual person. We know each one of us like process and consume information, data, entertainment, infotainment, doesn't really matter. Anything that comes into our sensory organs, I suppose, or the aspects of us in a very different way. So it's important to recognize that person, your delivery, your conduct, your construct, your content, everything will change when you know that you are communicating with one singular listener at a time, right? Everyone's listening, but they're listening with their own pair of ears. Research is necessary for modern businesses to grow. And if it's done right, so in other words, we can do research that is irrelevant. We can ask the wrong questions. We can ask it to the wrong people. We can ask at the wrong time. It doesn't really matter. There's a lot of ways to do it wrong, but if you do it right, definitely is going to help the way that you can increase your ratings bit by bit by bit, and work in small dosages that you really want. Look year to year to see your progress, right? So, what were the numbers last year at this time? What are the numbers now? Because let's say seasonally, we can blame quote unquote the same things for rising, or I'll say falling numbers at the end of the day. Okay, so this we did bring up. I'm saying before about the crystal ball, where yes, we don't really, we don't depend on say predictions like a Nostradamus thing, and we don't look into a crystal ball and see a future like this weird formulated future. You need to do the work. You need to, like like I said before, ask the right questions, perform it accurately, perform it with high quality, again with the right people, ask the right questions, compile the data correctly, and then obviously compile it to servant support, business intelligence, or knowledge management, so that a a decision maker, be it a station manager, program manager, sales manager, it doesn't really matter, right? Can go and make the correct decisions based on the correct interpretation of that information that you have now obviously put together, accumulated via your research in the RAMS process, and even in your own focus groups, of course, right? So don't get intimidated, as we said, by the language of research. Tracking studies versus action studies can tell you which direction you should go next, and know what you want, and don't let the research companies take the lead, right? So we want definitely the information that the BRC, for example, gives us and supplies us with, right? We do need that, but instinct and obviously the when you say business intelligence is that confidence and that ownership of your craft, your art, whatever it may be, and understanding that you know what is best for also your radio station, the way that a radio station works, a listener works, the content works, sales work, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Like these are professional skills that data can't match up to. So we've got to obviously combine the two together. Let's look at this. It doesn't help you research programming issues if you don't really want the answers. So Matt Hudson quotes, research alone is no way to make a program decision. Research doesn't prove or disprove anything. We still need creative minds to understand, interpret, and implement the findings. So, as I mentioned just in the previous slide, it's very important to know how to interpret certain trends or certain behaviors or certain, I say, tacts or whatever it may be, right? So when you're looking at this data, we really have to go in depth, like, create our own kind of what is it, deconstructing of the process, with our own teams and our own specialists. And again, who knows your listener better than you do, right? You would know best as to why it is probably that they are behaving in such a manner, why certain things are not really flying with them, so it's not popular, or the things that they easily respond to, the stuff that they've been asking about, and asking the station for. The competitions that are work the best, right, with the best type of clients that can associate we can associate with, um, the best places to be seen, etc. Right? Again, all contributes to the bottom line. Obviously, revenue, which is brought in by listeners, and so attracts clients. Clients bring money, and we need money. Right? Before you begin, make sure that you are prepared to make the necessary changes and know that you have the staff to deal with the findings, right? So, station managers need to sit back and say that I got the information. I want to process it correctly. So, because again, I'm a professional, I know what I'm doing. I need to know how to apply what I get as information, data, and turn that into knowledge, right? And then know that I have a strong staff support system that will go and execute, right, or implement my, I say, instructions or whatever it is, right? So, what is the book? The book are the diaries that I spoke about, right? Diaries that are filled in by, again, these are random selections that are selected by the BRC. according to algorithms that do represent the sample sets do represent the community, or like I say, the community that the communities we're trying to represent within South Africa and the landscape here. Um, and they will go and they'll quote unquote fill out a diary. We're going to see what an example looks like in just a moment, right? So they're obviously not, it's not real time listening. So the phantom cum, so accumulative, right? Numbers, right? Cum, right? The percentage of your cum that does not mention your radio station in their diaries, as they didn't remember listening, right? So the phantom cum. Okay. Sometimes, again, the thing is that there's a lot of listeners that don't necessarily, I mean, in certain situations, maybe fill up diaries correctly. I would assume that most of them have to, because they are instructed and they are guided by the BRC. But perhaps, incomplete in terms of, referencing correctly. Wrong station even sometimes might be referenced. There's a bit of confusion here and there. And also your diary, I mean, like you're busy listening to stuff, trying to also not only categorize, or I would say, put it into a journal, so journalize, I suppose. Journal is a better word, right? Your behavior and your acting, the way that you're acting, the way that you're listening, the way you're consuming, whatever it may be, right? There is room for error. I get that. And that has to be interpreted accordingly. So you can have all the research results in the world, but it will always come down to people. Research is only a tool. So, what is the radio audience measurement? The RAM, okay? It's a multi-platform and intuitive survey that is respondent friendly across all walks of South African life. So this tool collects the most accurate data through a 7-day diary across different geographies, locations, languages, and socioeconomic landscapes. The BRC commissions the BRC RAM through its research supplier, the TNS, okay? And the data is released quarterly. The data is released quarterly each year, February, May, August, and November, if you can recall that from the previous lecture. So now that we have a nice little definition for it, I know that you understand it. Also, you've understood it up to this point as well. What are some of the constraints? But I mean, how does this actually work? Right. So, you see the BRC RAM, I think I said about 10-ish years ago. Right. Maybe I said that in the previous lesson. I did say it's been a long time. So they started taking over the process in 2016. So the survey will consist of two elements: the placement interview designed to collect information about the households and the individuals that are selected, that could also represent other household members over the age of 15 years old. Why is it important to look at youngsters? So 15, let's say, to 18, they're not earning any money, they're spending all their parents' money, whatever it is. These are great forecasts for our future listeners, right? So knowing that we have a certain demographic and they're behaving in a certain manner and they are responding to certain things, like we know that we want to be able to translate them into dedicated work, obviously, uh, uh, you know, working, individuals. Yeah, there we go. All right. When they do, so they can spend money and they can respond to our advertising and whatever it may be, right? Okay. The diary designed to collect radio listening for all commercial and community South African radio stations is designed for each quarter hour, should I say, across a week. So from, let's say, 6 to 6:15, 6:15 to 6:30, 6:30 to 6:45, 6:45 to 7 o'clock, just for an hour. The quarterlies are very important. I'm saying the quarterlies within the clock itself are really important, because we have very, very different listener behaviors. And let's say, listeners that tune in, for example, at certain times of the day, more likely than others, but at certain times of the weekend, a lot less popular than weekdays. For example, we want to also be able to really nail down, in each quarter of that hour, right? Ways how we also, start to look at our cues, and we look at, let's say, time spent listening, how to increase that per 15 minutes at a time, for example, right? Really, all these things that I'm mentioning is a bit of an overload of information. I do understand that, but all these things are important for us to understand, like the semantics of radio at the end of the day. BRC RAM releases happen 4 times a year, as we mentioned before, and the first industry release was out January to June. That was the diary that they, in back then, they wouldn't do quarterlies, right? That was obviously bi-yearly, right? That's a bi-yearly, no. And that was released on the 25th of August 2016. So now we're going to get a couple of pictures. You're going to see things are going to make a little bit more sense, especially when you get to the diary, so you can see what that looks like. Quite an old statistic there. It doesn't really matter. We're trying just to understand, like, vital signs. Yeah, random selection, household flooding. I mentioned the term flooding that SARF used to use to a larger inaccuracy that the BRC does, right? Let's say there are 15,000 households, there could be 61,000 individuals, and they will be the sample set for this particular quarterly that is here, right? Obviously recorded, not really guessed, okay, at all, because these are literally what they are getting information from. Again, perhaps digitally, more probably now. When you do look at these diaries and stuff, you'll see that they're not on paper, no longer a journal. They used to be in the olden days, right? Now we can do it digitally, right? So the probability portion to size, how are households and individuals selected with a sample interval, the way that so again, so when I say random, we have to understand that each area, for example, needs to be well represented, all right? So it's not a question of, I suppose, equality in terms of, let's say, race or whatever it may be. But if, let's say, the particular area is classed by a middle class, right? And it does have a variation of, let's say, age demographics and race demographics and let's say income demographics, right? Lifestyle demographics. We would like to have a good representation of what this particular area is actually about, right? So, how can we sample to represent a whole population? Basically, exactly just like I said there. So going and using the correct ways of selecting the right people in a certain area to be part of these surveys and studies as we move along. I'm just going to quickly go a little further in here so that you can see. So the diary would look like this, right? Okay, and let's just go a little closer. Yeah, all right, that's a little better. Right, so day one. uh, Monday to Sunday. We're getting where on what, right? Listening to which stations, whatever we may be at particular times, in the morning and the afternoon or evening. We look at this side here. And these are all in your textbook. As you can see, these are snapshots from the textbook. We look at, let's say, total audiences. So let's look at Monday to Friday. Please, there are two differences here. The yesterday figures, right? So the averages of as well, the Monday to Friday and the Monday to Sunday, right? The P7D listeners, right? Total audiences across are calculated in the quarterlies. You can see there, right, that have been, oh, shibbit, skis, ne? All right. So viewership numbers for 1 week. I wouldn't necessarily want to reference the viewership at any one time because it's supposed to be listenership. So this might apply to the TAMs specifically. Okay, and then obviously we're looking at a different, male-female ratio, 53, 47%, having a look at, let's say, different percentages of who we've, obviously used within our research to get our cumes, right? So cumulative figures, right? Black 31, white, Indian, and colored, right? Okay, all right. And again, that for me would look that would, for example, here would obviously look and apply to a certain station, right? Where we might have predominantly, let's say, white listeners here and predominantly male listeners, kind of looks like a 5FM type, of setup, even though they are targeting, let's say, obviously the black community and have changed their format, quote unquote, to this is probably five. I'm looking at now in terms of like just at the ages here. Just a little bit of an older audience as well. Yeah, probably is five. Yeah. Anyways, okay, let me put this down. If you understand that, that's fine. Go there, and I'm gonna go to the next part. Right. So more to look at, more to understand, right, in terms of devices that are being used, where, I said to you a little bit earlier on, like are we looking at a metropolitan? This is, I can mention this before, so is it in the metropolitan? Is it in the suburban areas? Is it within rural areas? Right? Again, also it looks kind of like five for me, right? Nothing in the rural areas that makes actually sense. English 38, Afrikaans people 34. We can look at home, so we look at listening at home on the radio set. You understand? So the radio device. So these don't have to. These are not interlinked. I'm just saying that would make sense looking at the statistics across, right? Um, a vehicle, and then the device. Okay, vehicle. Well, these ones are other TV and work university might be via a cell phone, right? Okay. Um, Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What I said stands because let's not look at that across and look at them rather individually. That makes sense, please. These are not connected. Okay. All right. All right. And then we look at the different SEMs. That's a percentage here in Gauteng, 98% there. We've got the one there. SEMs across down. Let's look down, not across like this. That makes no sense either. Uh, and we would look at how many, from the varied SEMs, how many percentages. So we look at the high SEMs are much more popular. I'm saying with this station here, so higher earning, I'm saying higher spending people, I would say, with higher lifestyles. I'm saying so. Again, we look at all that stuff: TVs, washing machines, dishwashers, clothing, household goods, cars, how many cars that you own or whatever it is. Right. And then we have, looking here, an example of a single week of a RAM for XYZ, not FM, right? Okay. So the number of listeners and then repeat listeners, people that are coming back to listen, right? So on a Tuesday, 20, that's not bad. 18, 20 to 18 ratio is not bad. 70 55, also not that bad. 40 22, that's a bit drastic. It's low. 5 to 0, that's bad. So that means we have to look at our Fridays and look at what's going on there. Saturday, not so bad, but not so great either. That's pretty cool on a Sunday. Very good work there, you know. Okay. And then we look at like a graph, for example, seeing that variance in the cumulative, I would say ratios, in this particular sense, they are representing the, let's say this is the thousands, right? Okay. And you would see their repeat listeners. We too would see the same kind of, trends that are falling in. I mean, that's a bit weird. Going from 26 to 58, 15 to 45. What do we do? You understand? Like, what is going on there? We'd ask those questions. And results of 576 gross total listeners, 57 gross average listeners, 138 net total cum, so the cum listener total accumulated, and 9 net average listeners. Okay. Oh, right. Here we go. So some Q&A. I'm going to close up the lesson with some Q&A that is found on the BRC site, right? So how is the BRC RAMs conducted? How are the RAMs conducted? The survey is conducted through placement questions, right? To the demographics, a 7-day self-completion diary. All interviews are done face-to-face by trained interviewers, right? Again, we now also have the digital aspect that is included, right, using Catty, right? How are respondents recruited? They are in the sampling section, we'll see. So you'll see the explanation as to what I said just before. Why is the BRC RAM diary paper-based rather than, for example, making use of technology, which it now also does? Formulated during the tender process specified that the survey be paper-based. Paper diaries were deemed to be best suited as they are accessible to everyone in South Africa. Very good point there, regardless of education level, literacy, or type of devices. Right. Okay. Not everyone in here has a smartphone. Right? I pretty much can say that they do have a phone. Maybe not a smartphone. I mean a cell phone, should I say? Okay. The diary is purposefully kept very simple, limited written words in the diary to obviously make sure that instructions are understood clearly. Okay. So how does it decide on which radio stations to include in the survey? All stations broadcasting on AM or FM frequency as published by CASA are included in the survey. Right. This excludes radio stations that broadcast exclusively through streaming. So no online, no digital radio is included. Why are they not included? Because the way that we count people is different. We have users here and we have people, listeners here. Okay. Um, uh, that's my like 2 cents. Currently, the incidence. Okay, incidence. Sorry, incidence. Oh, embarrassment. The incidence of people listening to radio stations is quite small. However, this is monitored in the establishment survey. Will be included once it becomes more prevalent in South Africa, and again will be not measured in the same way because it's not consumed at all in the same way as well, or even tallied in the same way. How can I check whether a radio station was included in the survey? The figures include all stations from the BRC website. How can I request that my radio station be included in the survey? All you need to do is please email the BRC, station name used, the station name registered in CASA, coverage area, and the contact person. All right, very important. We're getting to the part here that you'll understand. What is the BRC RAM sample? 30,000 households. Obviously changes, as we said, the interviews per year conducted amongst members of the household age 15 plus. How is it drawn up? A survey uses probability proportion to size sampling to identify each small area where 4 interviews will be conducted. The likelihood of the small area being selected is linked to the area's size. So that more people in a small area, the higher the chance they'll get chosen to sample. Is probability or non-probability sampling used? No, probability sampling is used. All persons in South Africa age 15 plus have a chance to be selected in or on or for the survey. Is the sample proportionate? So no, it's not really. The sample is disproportionate in that there is higher allocation of metro areas. The sample frame is drawn to be spread over 60% metro, 20% small urban, 20% rural. Then it's weighted to the actual population proportions of 41% metro, 29% small urban, and 31% rural. Remember, both of these things here and here make sure that we get a really good, a well-rounded understanding, including this one here as well, right? Understanding of what is happening out there. Homework, please. Independent learning. So on your own, read example 11a. So it will be from the next level radio, page 425. Complete the activity 11a questions 1, 2, 3, and 4 on pages 419. Stop the share over there. I'm also going to stop the lesson. Let's see you in lesson 3.